pro-life groups put new pressure on the Department of Health and Human Services to end all taxpayer-funded research using fetal tissue. HHS is reportedly holding listening sessions, seeking feedback from pro-life groups, pro-life scientists, other scientists, and other stakeholders as the department reviews its programs that use fetal tissue. Fetal tissue refers to the organs and other body parts taken from aborted babies. The department currently funds more than $100 million into research projects that use fetal tissue. Pro-life groups are calling for those contracts to be canceled. To discuss this and more, we're joined by Dr. David Prentice, the Vice President and Research Director of the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and Dr. Tara Sander-Lee, a scientist with almost 20 years' experience in academic and clinical medicine. She's an associate scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you spell out for us the concerns with fetal tissue research?
The concern with fetal tissue research is that it's not ethical, and that any research or therapies or treatments that are attempted are going to be tainted. And so we truly believe that these tiny babies that they are using for research, it really assaults their dignity of life. It's not right to exploit one group of human beings for the benefit of another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is this myth, though, that fetal tissue research is the only type of research that can lead to specific cures or certain vaccine formulations. Can you tell us the truth? Can you clarify, is that true?
And you used the right word, Catherine, myth. Transplantation is one example, that they're going to transplant all of this fetal tissue and cure all of these diseases. Well, in point of fact, it's never worked. They have tried that over a period of decades. And in fact, the results were bad for patients. In one example, leaving them twisting and jerking uncontrollably after the transplant.
My goodness.
Vaccines, it turns out fresh aborted fetal tissue has never been used to create vaccines. There are these cell lines that were created from an abortion back in the 60s. So there is an ethical taint there. But as far as ongoing abortion, it's not used at all for any vaccines. There are modern ethical ways to make the vaccines.
What are those ethical alternatives?
Well, for example, there's also an attempt for researchers to make what are called humanized mice, and using, taking the liver and the thymus from aborted fetuses, and then injecting that into the mouse to basically create, and transplanting them into the mouse to create a mouse that has a human-like immune system so that they can study infection. But what researchers have found that there are alternative and even better alternatives in that they can obtain what's neonatal thymus tissue during normal surgical procedures. And so, there's an abundance of this tissue available, and it's even working better than the fetal tissue.
Why is this type of research still being funded by the government today? And what role does NIH Director Francis Collins have in this?
Well, it continues simply because no one has stepped in to stop it and change it and redirect those funds to good science. And you know, it's interesting that the statute that's on the books that Congress passed back in 1993 only talks about transplantation research, not basic research. NIH hasn't funded any transplant research since 2007. So they continue to do this basic research primarily because they can still do it. It hasn't been prohibited. And frankly, Dr. Collins could stop that immediately as director of NIH because it's an agency decision.
So finally, as we conclude this conversation, what is your message to the Department of Health and Human Services?
We really encourage them to redirect the funds that are currently going to research for using fetal tissue towards other more ethical measures. So for example, they could direct them towards institutes that are only conducting ethical research, like using adult stem cells. The other thing that we encourage them to do is redirect these funds to maybe establish some type of procurement agency or tissue bank in which investigators and researchers that want to use alternatives can have easy access to these tissues. Because right now, I think one of the big hurdles for researchers is that it's more difficult to obtain ethical means sometimes than it is to obtain the fetal tissue.
We are so grateful to be joined by two excellent pro-life scientists. Thank you both for being here, Dr. David Prentice and Dr. Tara Sander-Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you.